Hi all, this is Winter coming back to you today with part 3 of my overall review of the album We Are Not Your Kind by Slipknot. This is part of Glacial Shield's project to address depression and self-isolation and suicidal thoughts, again as part of Bell Let's Talk. Bell Let's Talk itself occurs on January 28th, but we'll have videos going on throughout the week in support of this effort. We think it's an important thing to talk about. The first thing I want to say before we get into the content today is that if you yourself are experiencing mental difficulty, or if anyone you know is experiencing those difficulties, there are resources to help you. The first resource I would like to bring up is the Canadian Suicide Hotline, which is at 1-833-456-4566. If you live in the United States, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. There are also many professionals who deal with these sorts of things all the time. These can be free or paid for. So please, if you feel like you need help, seek it out. Don't delay. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. I know that from experience. Okay, I don't want to make any further delays. If anyone is listening to this all the way through, you've heard me ramble. So we're going to start with the last 4 songs on this album that I wanted to review. These are Orphan, My Pain, Not Long for This World, and Solway Firth. We're going to start with Orphan. Orphan is one of the first songs on this album that fully addresses the difficulties behind recovery. It's a song that's filled with anger, it's filled with frustration, and it is filled with what feels like attempts to step forward, like acknowledging that you have difficulties, but there's also a lot of second thoughts, second guessing, desire to give up. And I want to start with a quote saying, "I wept when I realized there were no more demons left to conquer." This is a hard thing for people to understand who've never experienced the anger that can come with depression. But basically, it's not that you're happy to feel like you're retaliating, to feel like you have to fix yourself. But it can be addicting to feel like you're a form of avenging angel, or you're some kind of judge over the people around you. And it comes from that hurt. It comes from that understanding that other people may have partially caused your depression. But it's a risky thing because anger, retaliation, revenge, not only does it hurt the people around you, when you eventually realize that's not who you want to be, and that you want to be happier, and you want to be surrounded by people, that sort of attitude risks driving everybody away before you get there. And it may be very hard to get them back. The next quote is almost directly tied with that difficulty, where it says, "An opportunity to show my feelings, with skin so thick you'd swear it was armor. A penitentiary that only lets the oxygen out. I wasn't ready for a version of the truth to get out. I'm getting desperate. I wouldn't want to fester in another bad dream." So this talks about the back and forth behind wanting to show your feelings, wanting to tell people what you're going through, but not knowing how to do it anymore. You've put up so many walls that you're almost unsure how to properly show emotion. And thanks to Corey's ex-wife, or in more vague scenarios, people that you may know talking about you and putting out a version of the truth that is somewhat true, but maybe not entirely, you're left unsure how to deal with the situation. Because it's hard when people find out about your depression that you don't want to know about it. It's hard for even people you care about and trust to find out about your depression because you don't want them to worry about you. You don't want them to judge you. And that is a slow thing to do. Learning to get back into trusting people, learning to get back into being open with people. It's a valuable thing. Humans are meant to have other humans in their life. This is one of those things where I would almost encourage, if you're at the point where you're having difficulty with humans, Start by getting yourself a pet if you know that you can take care of a pet, love a pet, and raise a pet. I'm not one of those people who would encourage you to get a pet that you're just going to ditch after a year, but get something that makes you feel a world connection. And that will help you begin to let out your emotional side. It's not a bad idea to maybe talk to your pet if you need to practice just letting something out, or practice showing something living and alive how you feel. Now, again, your pet can't understand you, but just as a step, these are steps that I can think of that might help to begin to lower those walls. If you have a specific family member you trust, talking to them. If you don't have family, I know some people don't, finding a friend, finding a therapist, someone that you can let those walls down even slightly with, and someone who will encourage you in a positive way to do that. Someone who will ask you questions, someone who will stop prying when you tell them it's time to stop prying, and someone who will genuinely try to provide answers to you to the best of their ability about what they think of the situation. And as you go, that's when you can slowly get back into more social situations, dealing with more people, more strangers, and hopefully eventually get to the point where, if you choose, be able to talk about this thing openly. Because one of the things that I'm learning is I don't want other people to feel like this. And for all the times that I was angry and all the times that I was hurt, I never wound up feeling good when I made other people feel bad. So, to me, all of this, even though I'm rambling a bit on this section, this is important. Learning to let down those walls and be a, um, a more full person is one of the biggest struggles of coming out of depression, but it's important to get there. So, the chorus itself is Corey referring to himself as an orphan, and he believes nobody knows the full story, which is probably true. Often when you're suffering from depression, there's 8, 10, 12, 20 factors that are causing it, and it's very unlikely that anyone in your life will know every facet of that. And on top of everything, you've built up this wall where you might not be telling people things. You might not be showing people how you truly feel about stuff. And it's interesting because he's talking about how he's lying, but he's lying in a way that only winds up hurting him. He's presenting that he's angry, he's aggressive, and he's unabashedly intentionally solitary, when the truth is he's hurting, and clearly from the song, he is very lonely. And loneliness does get into your heart, and it creates that fear that you're going to fall back into, as he says, a bad dream. You can relapse into depression if you aren't taking steps forward. And it's always a fear. It's like a drug addiction in that way. You are dealing with knowing you've had it before, knowing that you've done things likely while you had depression that you have to deal with the fallout, and you're scared that you're going to fall back into it. And it's okay to be afraid, but it's also a good idea to try to look at the positive fact that you're pushing forward. Verse 2 again discusses the difficulty with trusting and showing the people around you yourself when you're trying to get out of depression. In other words, trying to show them who you really are versus the person that you presented when you were trying to put up a mask or a wall. And it also talks about something that is very common with people, at least in my experience, who've experienced bad times. It's that desire to just give up and take a step back. And it's because it feels easier, but it never leaves you feeling better. It's the same as weight loss, something else I'm working on. It's very easy to sit down and order a large pizza and feel good about it for 20 minutes, even though I know I'm not going to feel good about it the next day when I step on the scale. It's easier when you are trying to recover from depression to let the bitterness come back, to let the sadness override you. It takes willpower to get over those humps. It's okay to have those humps, and it is okay once in a while not to get over them immediately. It's okay to get back to being a little bitter. It's okay to get a little angry. It's okay to feel a little sad. But again, avoid allowing the chronic issue to come back. He also talks about how your friends should understand why you're so messed up, but he also doesn't believe that people can understand. And that's a contradictory thing that I think a lot of people who are upset, grieving, or angry feel. You feel like the person you're talking to should just get you and they should understand exactly what's going on in your mind. But at the same time, you're telling yourself they can't possibly understand because they're not going through what you're going through. I think it's more fair to the person in front of you to realize that no, maybe they don't know your exact thoughts, but maybe they have had experiences like you. Maybe even if they haven't, they're at least very empathetic. And to get angry at them for not fully understanding is also not fair, especially with people trying to help. Even me, during this entire conversation that we've been having, or you've been listening to, I've chosen poor words. I've chosen bad descriptors of things. When you're working to get out of depression and someone genuinely cares enough to try to help you, try to understand that they're not going to be flawless in their way they're doing it. Just like you're not going to be flawless in the way you present your attempts at recovery. Another part of this verse is that he talks about the kennel of the fetish that you seek. In other words, the cage of the addiction that you have. I would say this is one of the lines in the song that both refers to his wife and potentially himself. He's talking about how his wife has a savior complex, and to him, it's basically a cage for him that she locked him in. She made him her pet project. But I think he's also talking about his own addiction to anger. It makes him feel somewhat good to be angry, and now trying to work himself into being happier and feeling better, he's struggling with the fact that in some ways the adrenaline kick, the ability to really give it to someone you feel like deserves it, is hard to let go of. He also says that there's still a part of him dying inside, and it's that part of him that presents itself as a monster. I believe that's true. I feel like people who come out of these situations and get better probably predominantly do keep some of the affliction of what happened to them in those weeks, months, or years of their life. It's one of those things that if you want to call it learning, if you want to call it jadedness, it could be a lot of descriptors. But I think the point is he's trying to say that that side of him that's still hurt, that's still uncertain, that's still uncomfortable in his own skin, lashes out once in a while. And when it does, it likely surprises people. Unexpected bouts of aggression, sadness, it can catch people off guard, especially when it seems to them that you're overreacting. I would say the best way to put this is if you have these situations, and especially during a recovery phase when you're not fully recovered, these will be more common than most people would like to admit. That's when you need to go to somebody and apologize and say, look, I've been going through some stuff. I'm working on it. I'm sorry for how I acted. It's not weak to say I'm sorry. I want to do another quote. He says, "Tell me all about it. I love to hear it. The way I ruin everything I touch. I never thought I'd get to say I'm sorry. But then again, I think you ask too much. Too white to be black to be blue. Too sick to be me. Too blanked up to be you. I only wonder if I'll ever see the end of the road." So there's a lot to unpack in this quote. But I still think this has to do with recovery. I think this has to do with he's trying to be better, but other people around him remember what he had done during his depression and during his anger. And even during his recovery, they're saying that he ruins what he touches, probably because of the wall he put up, because of the coldness he showed, because of the relationships he broke. But he also is at the phase where he's willing to say, I'm sorry, which when you're in that presentation of a stone-faced person, that's not what you're going to be. You're not going to be willing to apologize. You feel justified in what you're doing. And he's saying, I never thought I'd get to the point where I could say I'm sorry for how I acted. And it's important. No one's saying that you should feel bad for being depressed. But when you're at the point where you can handle it, you should apologize to people that you lashed out at, or that you mistreated, or friends that you drove away. It's important to rebuild those relationships, and even to somewhat help them understand what happened. If you don't tell people at all why you did something, it's not fair to ever expect them to come back. But he also says, I think you ask too much, and you keep things too black and white or too black and blue to deal with you. In other words, this would likely be to his friends that sided with his ex-wife. Their expectations of him were too high. It likely helped to increase, if not cause, his depression. And the fact that they are only willing to see the situation as she's good, he's bad, makes it too difficult for him to deal with them and work with them. And that's the thing, is when you're dealing with someone who has had depression, try not to see the situation in white and black. I'm avoiding the black and blue line, even though I know it's potentially a reference to spousal abuse. When you're looking at someone who's had depression, try to understand it's not all white and black. They do care about you, even if they're not at the time able to properly show it. They do care, even though maybe they're putting up a wall that says they don't. And it's something that both sides have to work on. It's not okay for someone who's recovering from depression to expect everyone to just get it. But the people who are helping them, or the people who are around them, need to understand that there are going to be rough patches, and there are going to be some contradictory things as the person struggles through what's going on inside them. So, the next song, thankfully, is much shorter because my voice over the last few days has become very worn out. It's called My Pain, and it can either be literally about chronic mental pain, and less literally, it could possibly be about his ex-wife. So I'm basically going to quote the whole song, but it's like a 45-minute quote, or a 45-second quote. He says, pain, she loves me, wants me to be less scared, more free, to feel more of my pain. I'm your friend and I'm your shade. Do what you want, just remember it's for love. I'm your wall and I'm your rock. Don't run away, don't forget it's only love. I'm your chain and I'm your lock. There's no escape just as long as I say love. I'm your death and I'm your cold. You end with me, remember this was never love. I'll take this and I'll take that. I'll take you too. You can never give too much. Pain, she loves me, wants me to be less scared, more free. I've always felt this way for you. So, from the point of view of literal pain, this kind of discusses how pain envelops you and embraces you. It really does. It can become everything. And it will eventually take away everything else from you that you have. Because if you become so absorbed with your sadness and your loneliness that you forget to tend your flock, you forget to take care of your physical health, you forget to focus on your work, you forget to focus on the things like your hobbies that you care about, and more importantly, you forget about the people in your life because you're so drawn into yourself. And it can be addicting because, again, this in a sadder way talks about what the last song talked about. It talks about the addiction to drama, the addiction to fighting, the addiction to feeling like the victim. And again, that's because it makes you feel justified in lashing out. It makes you feel justified in isolating yourself from everybody. But again, remember, taking this route takes away the things that will eventually make you feel better. And it can be difficult because you can get to a phase where, say, you want to just fight with everybody because you want them to get how angry you are and you want them to be punished for how you feel they mistreated you. But you will get to a phase in your life where you want to be better. So please, if you're struggling through depression, try your best to talk to people in a way that you would want to be spoken to, even if you're hurting. You can talk to them about this topic. You can talk to them about what they're doing wrong to you, but try to be kind and try to be respectful, because one thing I look back at and wonder about is how many of my friends did I hurt? How many of my friends did I do wrong and help drive them closer to the mentality that I had? And I know I want to talk about how to help people with depression, but I also want to talk to people who have it and say, you need to think through what you're doing. You need to still try to do things in a way that helps and doesn't hinder, and take a step back. And one of the best ways I can say it is, if someone hurt you, they need to understand that so that they can be better in the future, hopefully. But you don't want to become them. You don't want to be the person who causes the damage. So remember, care about the person you're talking to, even if you don't like them anymore. In a less literal sense, I think the song is about Corey's ex-wife. She's basically reminding him that he belongs to her and that she can manipulate him just by saying she loves him. She also tells him that he is nothing without her and she's the one keeping him mentally stable. But he does recognize, or at least past tensively, that this wasn't love and that she's more of a chain and she's causing his hurt. He does seem to believe, even if you take this interpretation of the song, that they both became addicted to the pain of their bad relationship and that they eventually just became chained together with the phrase love. I encourage you, if you're in a bad relationship like this, talk to the other person. Be the partner who's willing to bring something forward and say, this isn't working the way it should. And if that doesn't help and nothing seems to be getting through, it's time to walk away. Abusive relationships, physical or mental, are not scenarios anyone should stay in. But it's not only physical and abusive relationships, it's relationships that just don't work. If you're with someone and you're trying your best and you just don't feel love for them, and you just don't feel that closeness or that desire to be with them, it's okay. Be respectful, tell them the truth, talk to them about what's happened, and break up with them. And if you're the one who's been broken up with, try to understand that doesn't make you worthless. It doesn't make you wrong. It's just some things aren't meant to be. But overall, the song is about the addiction to the pain and the addiction to those who are hurting you, I guess is the best way to put it. You want to be loyal. You want to be there for them. You obviously care about them. If the song is taken about his wife, he clearly cared about her. But sometimes you've got to care about yourself more. So it's a very short song. I think it's beautifully well put. I think it's very clear. But that is kind of what it is. I think that's the song. So the next song on this album is my favorite album or song on the album. It's called Not Long for This World. And the reason I love it is that it goes with that sadness and anger combined. And it is a really realistic portrayal of, you want to move on, you want to let things go, but you still have some of that lingering, just you want to tell people what they did to you. You have some of that lingering. You want them to know you're better in spite of them. And you want them to know that they did you wrong. It's an interesting song, but it comes with a lot of hope. And it even comes with a lot of hope for the people that mistreated him. And I think that's important. So he also ends, and I'm going to get into a lot of quotes with this song, but he ends with the statement that the other people who are involved with this will eventually need to acknowledge what they did and address it within their own head. And that's true. A lot of people get to a point in their life where they look back on what they've done and they decide they need to change. And I think he's trying to push that in the song. He's also trying to push the fact that even though he's angry and he's upset with them, he is wishing them well. He is wishing that their lives get better because he's acknowledging their lives are not perfect or flawless and that they have their own problems they're going through. And it's just wrapped up in the fact that he's still angry. And that's so realistic. How many times do people break up with their significant other? And it's like a bout of text or phone calls where you're almost saying, oh my God, I hope you're going to be okay. But you're also just ready to rip their head off. And I think he portrays it beautifully. But let's get into the actual quotes and the actual song. So first he says, I know I'm bitter and I'm full of rage. You would be too, what I've been through. Knowledge is a difficult age. Note that he doesn't put an actual age on knowledge, because people can learn the tough life lesson of the people around you are not always going to want the best for you at almost any phase of their life. But Corey has clearly recognized that he's learned from his past, but he's acknowledging that that knowledge left him bitter and angry at the world. And it's showing that important first step in recovery, or even a few steps in, that he's acknowledging that feeling. It's no longer a front, it's no longer subconscious. He's acknowledging that what he's been through caused him to be bitter and angry with everybody. And that's a good first step, because that acknowledgement will usually kick you into gear in realizing there's something wrong with you. And wrong with you meaning mentally, that you need to recover, not you. You know what I'm saying. So the chorus is, so decide, tell me how I'm going to die, because I've already gone away. Decide to tell me how you love to lie. It wasn't really hard to see. I'm not long for this world. So I think this chorus is just beautiful. I think it's talking to all the people he left behind. He's telling them that they kept telling him his trajectory was self-destructive. It was going to kill him. But they're likely, at least the way this song portrays it, they're still telling him his lifestyle is going to kill him. They're still judging his lifestyle. And he's saying, I've already gone away. I already died inside. I already decided it was time for me to move on. And then he says, tell me how you love to lie. And I've not heard this exact phrase, but I've heard people tell me that knew me before I got into mental health issues and during, that the part of me that they saw before I slipped into mental health issues was clearly fake. I was happier, I was more engaged, I was more caring about their feelings, and they felt that, obviously they didn't know what was going on, but they felt that the side of me they were seeing when I had slipped into mental health issues was the true me. I was showing how much I didn't care. I was showing how much I didn't actually want to be around them, be with them. And Corey is basically saying, it shouldn't have been hard for you to see that no, the me you knew, that you cared about, that you loved, was not fake. I was struggling. And he makes it pretty clear with the line, I was not long for this world, is that he was struggling to the point where he was close to suicidal. And what he's telling these people is, you can tell me I was on a path to self-destruction. You can tell me that I had always presented a false face to you. But the truth of the matter is, I'm recovering. I'm leaving this all behind. And you should have been able to see that I was having problems. And instead, you helped to cause more damage. So the next quote is, carving or biting, we bleed for keeps, out of control, into the cold, hell repeats. God, I'm starving, spreading me thin, buying a story, my soul was for sale, trust is such an arrogant thing. So he's acknowledging here that everyone in life is competing for work, for love, for friendship. And that cycle of taking the risk and getting hurt by people who are trying to compete with you, who don't have good desires for you, will keep happening. It is about learning to work through that and learning to take a healthy mentality towards it and acknowledge, yes, this is how humanity works. It's often not personal. But at the same time, it shows how even growing up and learning that lesson can be jading. He's saying trust is an arrogant thing. And he's implying that everyone knows you should not trust anyone else, but we choose to anyway. And maybe that's true. Maybe trusting anyone but yourself is a weakness, but it's a good weakness, because at least 50% of the time, that trust is not misplaced. And the value of that 50% of the time, and again, I'm shooting low ball here, but the value gained from trusting someone and getting their love, their caring, their help, their assistance back outweighs the people who are going to use it against you. Because those people who use it against you, they're not worth it. You can sever them, you can cut them off, and you can walk away, and you can keep only the good. Just remember that. So then, the next part of the song, I think, is my favorite part of the entire album, because it is very important what he has to say. He says, there's nothing mellow in the drama you live and breathe. You like your secrets kept in the family. You don't get credit for your rare good behavior. Go be a savior. You don't seem to get what I'm saying, and I'm sick and tired of explaining. Good night, goodbye, good luck. There's nothing worse than a ghoul manifesto. I'm not impressed, though. The greatest conclusion that I ever had was when I woke up and said, that's enough. Living never felt so bad. You don't accept it, and I don't care. Bury yourself above all your guilt. When you're ready, it'll be there. So he's speaking to his ex-wife, and probably more broadly his friends that left him. But he's saying he knows she has problems in her life. He's acknowledging that there's drama in her life. He's acknowledging that she's absorbed with that drama. He's acknowledging that clearly there are things going on in her family that are not healthy, and that she feels like people don't credit her when she tries to do right. And she feels like people don't credit her when she tries to save them and help them. And he's trying to acknowledge that and at the same time say that's not the point. I know that you have your own issues and your own difficulties, but you weren't willing to genuinely help me with mine. And I'm tired of explaining to you the difference, especially with her savior complex, which we've talked about, so we're not going to go into detail. But that's what he's saying here. And it's important to acknowledge that other people are people too, and that she's likely hurting too. She's very much likely hurting in this scenario. She's lost her husband. She has been publicly bashed by this entire CD. And she likely is looking at all the things she did, and even if she won't say it out loud, she's probably regretting some of her actions. So I'm glad he took the time to acknowledge it. And then he says, there's nothing worse than a ghoul manifesto. I'm not impressed, though, which I think the ghoul manifesto is another word for a savior complex. A savior is someone who wants to go in and fix everybody, while a ghoul manifesto can easily be read as somebody who feeds on the people who are already dead inside for their own benefit. And I can see the parallels and dissimilarities between the two of them just by saying that out loud. And it still ties into that you don't get your credit for your good behavior, because savior complex people often want to impress people with how valiant they are, with how charitable they are, with how caring they seem to be. And he's saying it didn't impress him because he sees past it. He gets that she was doing it for her own good, not to actually help him. But at the same time, he's acknowledging there's something deep inside of her that's causing that desire. And it's likely her own insecurities and her own difficulties. So I like that he, in anger, but still it sounds genuine, is saying goodbye to her and wishing her luck. Because for me, one of the most difficult things to say to someone, especially someone I care about, is goodbye. To me, it's very finalistic. And I've told everyone at least once in my personal life, I don't like goodbyes. If I'm not seeing you for a long time, or if I'm angry at you and we've been in a fight, it's very rare for me to say goodbye. Because when I say that, I mean I'm cutting you out of my life. So I see this as very finalistic. I see it as he takes goodbyes as seriously as I do, but he is telling her, good luck with fixing yourself as well. And he wraps that up with saying, eventually, you are going to have to face your own guilt. And that can probably apply to his ex-wife and himself. He clearly didn't treat her perfectly throughout their entire relationship, and she treated him badly as well. And he chooses the word bury yourself above all your guilt, because at the end of the day, you still are burying yourself in lies if you can't admit your own guilt. And it will not help you to improve as a person if you don't admit your guilt to the things you've done wrong. So I think those are very important takeaways from this song. Trying to balance telling someone what they've done to you while also realizing that no one's going to be perfect and that they likely had their own reasons for what they did. And I appreciate that he did it. And I do like that the song ends with the line, I was not long for this world. He chose not to say, I am not long for this world, because it implies that he has moved past those suicidal thoughts and he's ready to carry on. But the way he says it, that frustration, that anger, it shows that he still doesn't understand that people didn't realize how far gone he was. And I would like to say that's an important thing on both sides. He was intentionally masking just how low he felt like he had sank. Don't have the impossible expectation that people will telepathically pick up on your mental strain if you're not willing to tell them. It's an unfair expectation, and it can leave you feeling angry at people that don't deserve it. The last song is Solway Firth. Now, I don't know. I could be completely off base on this. Solway Firth is a location, I believe, in Ireland. So this could be tied into some important location for Corey or his ex-wife. I think it's likely a reference to the Solway Firth spaceman picture. I think it's saying that you're seeing a picture, but you're still not fully grasping what you're looking at, and there really is no way to fully grasp what you're looking at. And I think that makes more sense for the title of this song than just describing a location that's important. I think he's saying that this album has presented you with his picture of depression, but it hasn't shown you everything. And for people who've never had depression, it's likely a very confusing picture. So it's important to say that I feel like this song is a bit of a epilogue to the story. I feel like the story really ended with Not Long for This World, and him saying goodbye to his wife, saying goodbye to his past, and saying he is beyond suicidal thoughts and he's trying to get better while acknowledging it's a rough path. I think Solway Firth is sort of an explanation of the album. It says that he's looking back at all the killers and the fact that they fed on his hurt and his happiness to appease their own needs and wants. It sounds much more resigned and almost introspective than past songs. It shows almost a phase of understanding that what was happening in his life back then wasn't healthy for himself or anyone. And I feel like he's realized a lot of people in his life probably weren't there for good reasons. But again, the anger appears to be gone in that statement. It just appears to be an acknowledgement of it. But then the anger comes back in other parts of this song. He talks about how his ex got what she wanted by vilifying him, but he also talks about how he just needs to accept that. He tells her that she took away his ability to smile and taught him to fake happy emotions, but he's also willing to acknowledge that he lost his ability to be happy for a long time. So I think it's an interesting song. Again, I think it's more of an epilogue, but he's basically saying it's over, it's happened. This is all history at this point. The permanent effects it had on me will be there. You can't take back what you did. I can't take back what I did. But it's time to move on. I like the part of the song where he asks if they want a real smile or the smile he put on for years to fake that he didn't feel like a failure. I've certainly felt that. I've certainly done that. It also ties into people telling you to just be happier. It's not that easy, guys. For anyone who has not, fortunately, ever had depression, it's not as easy as just smiling and being happy. It's not as easy as just being around your friends and feeling better. It's difficult. And one thing I learned was that I could put on a realistic enough smile that people wouldn't know I was sitting at home at night. Anyway, so the next quote I want to talk about is, I don't need you to do it for me. I don't need you to understand. I don't need you to hide it from me. I just want to feel like any other man. I won't show you the whole story. I won't show you the aftermath. I won't show you my allegory. Don't look away. Here's an unexplainable one. So I do think, for one, this does tie into the fact that I think it's a picture. He's basically saying from a picture you can't get the whole story and you can't understand what exactly you're looking at. But what he's also saying is, I didn't need my ex-wife to make me feel better. I didn't need my friends to make me feel better. That was an internal thing. I needed to work through it myself. And while I agree with that to a point, you do need to work through it yourself. It is okay to also have other people to help you. But it is very fair to say, I don't need you to understand. If someone's not getting what you've gone through, don't force it on them. For your own good and for their good, you don't need to. If they're just not able to grasp how difficult things were for you, that's perfectly understandable for both you and them. I just want to feel like any other man. Again, a lot of people who have been through depression have experienced people telling them they're dramatic, telling them that they feel like their feelings are, so much more important than everybody else's. But that's not true. Most people who have depression just want to walk outside, look around, and smile as much as the other person walking down the street. It's important to understand that. So then he says, I won't show you the whole story. I won't show you the aftermath. I won't show you my allegory. But don't look away. Here's an unexplainable one. In other words, he wants you to see what he's presented. He probably wants this to be out there for people who have depression, to help them see other people experience it, to help them walk through their own emotions. But he doesn't want to show you the whole story. He doesn't want to show you every thought he had while he was depressed. He doesn't want to tell you every awful thing that happened between him and his wife. He doesn't want to tell you every person who stabbed him in the back. And that's true of a lot of people that have had depression. It's okay if they open up to you to let them tell you some about what happened. But if there's something they really don't want to tell you or talk about, let it be. You are not in your rights to force it out of them. And it's likely not helping them if you pry. Because even if you don't succeed at prying, you might be dredging up thoughts that they've already put back and they've already let go. So please, know that prying and no trying to force out every detail from someone can hurt more than it helps, even if you're trying to just help them. So then the next quote I want to talk about is, Corey says, "I'm not ahead of my time. I just drew the first breath. If I'm alive tomorrow, I will alleviate the pressure by cutting you out of me. I found my bottom line, dead on the front lines. I know I'll never go home, so set fire to your ships and past regrets and be free." Again, this is another just beautiful set of lines in this song. Corey acknowledges he's not the first person to have depression, he won't be the last, and that he's not even fully through with his own recovery yet. I think that "I just drew my first breath" is basically saying he's coming back to life from depression, but he's only at phase 1, and he's not certain that tomorrow is going to be great. And I think that's a good point. At some point you got to draw the first breath, and it might not work, but eventually you've got to try, and try, and try, and try. He's saying that his next step is going to be cutting everyone out of him and his life that doesn't need to be there, and that he found out the story of depression the hard way. He found his own lines that he will no longer cross. He found the lines of what he will accept and take from other people in the hardest way possible, on the front line. Having depression, having people who let him down, feeling like a failure, he learned a lot of things about himself and those around him. What he can give, what he can take, what he will accept, and what he won't accept. And it's time for him to cut out the things that he can't accept. And because of that, he can't go home to his wife. The last line, "So set fires to your ships and your past regrets and be free," I can totally side with. I have felt a lot of sadness, a lot of regret for some choices I've made. I felt anger, I felt guilt, I felt frustration. But at some point, sometimes you genuinely just need to hit a reset button. And it's okay. They tell you not to burn bridges in life. They tell you not to burn the ships. But sometimes if that's what you need to do to get the hard reset you need, it's what's got to be done if it's going to free you. And Corey truly seems to feel that's what he needs. The hard reset, the stepping away from everything. And I respect that. The next quote I want to talk about, and I believe this is one of the last, is, "Oh, while I was learning to live, you taught me to die. I guess I got what I wanted. Another needle in the back through purified scarification. It wasn't somebody else. You blank did it to me. You want a real smile. I haven't smiled in years." So again, this is tied in with his ex-wife believed she was helping him for good reasons or bad. But at the end of the day, while he was trying to get through a tough situation, said he could continue to live life, she was dragging him back down and hurting him. And he got what he wanted at the end of the day, which was being purified of what happened and being purified of the betrayal and the people around him that he didn't want. So he got what he wanted. He managed to move on. He managed to find out who wasn't loyal to him, and he managed to cut it all out. But it's scarification because it did damage him, probably permanently, and it's also very likely not what he wanted. That's one of the most difficult things to accept, is some of the choices you're going to have to make in choosing to improve your life are not going to be the ideal choice. They're not going to be the choice you would have made if every part of the situation was entirely up to you. But that is what it is. And learning to make those difficult choices is part of being a capable person in dealing with your own emotions and dealing with the situations you're presented. The world doesn't function on ideality. It deals in grays and, darker shades of grays. So there's never going to be situations like this where you look back on and say, yeah, I did everything right. And that's just the way it is. And that's okay. Most people don't look back on bad parts of their life and say, yeah, I dealt with that perfectly. That's okay. For those of you who've managed to live through depression and get out of it, tell yourself that. You may have done things badly. You may not have handled things perfectly. And that may keep you up at night sometimes and make you fear relapsing. But remind yourself that at the time things happened, you dealt with them the best way you felt like you could. And it was not as simple as looking back at it in rose-colored glasses or hindsight's 20/20. It was messy. It was difficult. Your mindset was not the way it was in a healthy scenario. You need to forgive yourself. If you've lost people, it's unfortunate, but you have to understand that their side of it is they might not have understood what you were going through, and you may have caused them mental strain yourself. Therefore, it's understandable if you were the one that they chose to cut out. And that is the flip side of this. If you're the person that's been cut out in these scenarios, if you're the person that's been told, you did this to me, it is important that that isn't the reason you slide into depression. It's important that you take a step back, acknowledge what you did, and try to improve. If you are still in a situation where you can talk to the person who's told you did something wrong to me, take it. Discuss it with them openly, share your opinion, but also listen to what the person is saying. If someone comes to you and says, I want you to understand you really had a negative impact on my life, it is very important that you hear that and you try to make sure you don't do it again. But again, forgive yourself. You're human. You make mistakes. You make bad choices. Learn from it. Do not let yourself slide into self-hate. And then, of course, Corey chooses to end the album with, you want a real smile? I haven't smiled in years. And that's, I guess, just a way to cap off the end of this. That, when you're depressed, it can feel that way. It can literally be months where you don't have a single happy moment. But guys, months or even years are not forever. Please keep trying. Please understand your life is important. Please understand that your life is important to those around you. Please understand that there's always a reason to live. There's always a reason to do better. There's always a reason to go outside and enjoy the sun. Just don't ever cave in to the desire to end your own life. Talk to somebody, do something enjoyable, find something to pull you away from that thought. The world will thank you for that choice. Everyone has things that they bring to the table. Everyone has things that they do well. Everyone has someone or something that will appreciate them and appreciate the space they take up in this world. And again, remember, if you chose to end things, you are taking away the opportunity to ever have those good feelings again. And I don't think that's what anyone wants, is to never have a good feeling again. So please take the opportunity to seek out the help, either through the hotlines we provided, through a therapist, through your friends and family, through going out and trying out new hobbies or sports. Just give yourself a chance. You're worth it. I don't know. I don't have a lot else to say, even though I feel like there is a ton to say. But this album helped me to vent out some things and think through some things that I had never truly confronted myself. And I feel like the Disturbed Indestructible album was the same way. If you're looking to feel that someone else understands, if you're looking to maybe work through some of your own thoughts, I'd recommend these albums. To those of you who have never experienced this, know that even though these albums get dark, that's the benefit of them. They present things that can help be a learning tool for people who haven't experienced it, and a glimpse into someone's mind who's experiencing this type of thing. And for the people who are experiencing this type of thing, it can be cathartic to hear someone else talk about it and bring words to your thoughts and to show it's possible to get through it. That's why we wanted to present these albums. I don't know how well we presented that, but that was the intention. I want to end this by saying all of you are important to this world. Never doubt your own value. And just, take care of yourself. I know the world is a difficult place right now. You guys have a great night. Bye now.